video number 4. Just to apologize in advance, I do have French bulldogs, which many of you are already aware of that. So if you hear snorting and clickety-clacks in the background, that is them. They snort very, very much. So now we're going to go over this beauty little style here. The only brand that I've really seen for this is Trojan. The rest of them that I've seen are unbranded, but they all hold a very similar shape. The ones that I've done so far are Elizabeth, and I'm sure I've done more, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. So I am in the process of doing this one. So we're going to see a progress on this one. So get ready. This is Alice. So a great way to showcase a scrappy piece or like a print like this. I know you guys don't have Curiouser and Curiouser yet, but one of the things that you'll find with this particular piece is that it is best suited for cutting and featuring it in the center versus an all over. Like with you, when you see Elizabeth, you think, you know, that it's great all over or as a center focal point. So this one, there's a lot of this blueprint, and it just kind of didn't look right as a whole piece. So I split it up into this framed piece, which I think really works well. One of the downsides to this style of train case is that it has a bar across the top where the handle attaches. And so you can see that it bubbles out right here. So this goes back to what I was saying. Don't hold yourself to an expectation that manufacturers didn't hold themselves to. So when you see like it's bubbling out a little bit, it's okay. It's not going to affect the wear. And when you're looking at it from a distance, you can't really tell. You know, you be a judge for yourself. Most of these train cases are gifts for your friends and family or for yourself. And just remember that if you look at it and you're like, oh, I hate that, stop what you're doing right there and evaluate it. Trust me, I've finished 15 train cases. So the biggest thing that I have learned is that if I am doing something and I'm like, I don't like the way this is going, stop immediately, evaluate what's wrong, why, and see if you can change it. If you're not sure, the group is a great place to ask questions about whether or not you think that it's working or you need some feedback. You can definitely add some batting to make it a little less noticeable. We talked about that in video number 2, I think, because I did add batting to one of my train cases. So you definitely can do that. Just remember, make sure your batting adheres to your case well and to your fabric well. So that way and I have a little one here too. Well, he's not little, he's 10, so he's back there yelling. Ignore him. I already got onto him about yelling, but you can see it did not work. Sorry. Anyway, you can add batting to make it not as noticeable. Or like I said in that video, if you use Peltex, you could notch it out right there where the bar is so that it would set a little bit more flush. Those are some options that you have. So the way that I do my train cases, I glue my top and my bottom in before I do my walls. So once I've glued my top in, as you can see here, remember that your pattern piece is going to sit flush in here, but your fabric piece is going to be bigger because I'm going to come back in here with my ruffle, and I want to make sure I've provided enough of a lip to where you're not going to see any of that underneath. So my ruffle is going to sit right here like that, or right here like this, and all you're going to see is this little bit of pink poking out, and you'll see it on the side. So remember that when you're making your pattern pieces, the bottom is the same, but you'll usually notice if you're mimicking the pieces you've taken out, your bottom will actually overlap significantly more. So keep that in mind so that you don't miscut. Now, one of the questions that Christina had that I haven't talked about is, do we glue this whole piece in at one time, or we do it in sections? I glue my pieces in sections, my wall pieces, not my lid and bottom. I do those at once, but I've glued this flat piece here because on this case you have a nice square curve, but on your American Tourister cases, give me 1 second, I'm gonna grab one real quick. You have a belled curve right here, so you're not gonna be able to just put it in flat and have it lay flat and perfectly. So we'll pop up, let me see if I can show you here. Okay, right in the inside of this corner, you'll see is a little bit of an overlap where I've glued the top in, and then I've had to overlap my bottom piece so that my corner comes in and curves. So when I'm doing that here, this one I'll have to do it a little tiny bit, but not much. But that's why I glue it in sections. So I'm gonna come in, glue my top piece right here, but I'm not gonna glue in, let me see, you might be able to see it better. I'm not gonna glue in the bottom corner because I'm gonna leave it, I'm gonna glue it like this. I'm gonna leave it puffed out a little bit. It'll be like sticking out like that right there. And then I'm gonna press it down after all this top glue has dried. I'm gonna press it down so that it overlaps on itself, nice and neat. And sometimes if I need to put some more glue in, I'll come in under it with a little tiny brush and I'll drop some glue in there so it'll form up really nice and go together like that. As you can see here, we have this little section that's not covered, even though I have loose fabric. I'm sorry, I'm not a professional teacher, so bear with me, guys. I have this little flap here, but that doesn't go there, that'll get cut off. This is where my hinge cover goes. On this style case, we do a hinge cover. So I have this piece will go over that section, if that makes sense. And I'll show you my finished train case because mine has a hinge cover and it is the same style. So that is what this is. The hinge cover goes on very last, and you can do it either way with these ruffles. You can do it under, or you can lay your ruffle over the top. Just be sure that when you do that you have a nice finished edge of your ruffle so that when it shows on the top it's clean. And I would recommend going back and just hand stitching it down to keep it intact. Thank you, Connie. So this is the first one I did. Very first one. This is mine. It was my Mama's train case, and I kept it. I've used it for alterations and stuff. And the inside smelled, and it was like a little stained, and it was starting to get really worn from me carrying it all over. And so I decided to take the plunge, and I'm so glad I did because I love sharing this stuff with you guys. I love teaching everybody that you can do this too. And if you're scared, that's okay. I'm here, and so is everyone else. We're here to walk you through it. And some of our bag makers have excellent advice because they are pros at this kind of thing. I am not by any means. I'm just winging it most of the time. And I have a very mathematical husband, and that helps too. So this is a great place to put a simple pocket. So I know pockets are one of those things that everybody's like, oh, I don't know. If you're not sure of how to add a pocket, this is the best area to do that because you just make a flap and you can trim it out with bias tape and call it a day. There's your pocket. No problem. I usually have a pair of scissors in here, but I guess they ran off. But I usually use this to hold my little scissors. Now on this particular train case, I used foil. I think that's how you call it, what you call it. I used that in here because that's all I had to match with my laminate. So this is laminate and this is foil. And I'm sharing that because I just want you guys to know you can use anything. If you think it'll work, you could use paper. There are lots of train case groups where people do paper on the inside. You have tons of options. Don't be afraid to try new things. I'm going to say that 1,000 times. But I do want to show you some mistakes that I made. When I did this train case, I made a separate piece for this because that's how it was. And I had to take it apart twice because I didn't like the way it looked. I don't do it that way anymore. That is one way you could do it to eliminate some of the issues with the curve. But what I found was that I could almost never get that center piece to go in straight. So I don't do it that way. I do it as one big piece. I like the seamless look overall. The other thing about this particular one is I did bias tape around the whole thing. I don't do that on the train cases that I do anymore because I find that it breaks it up a little bit and I just prefer it without it. But it's definitely an option that you can do. I do it in my Samsonite style cases because they go in a little bit differently and I like it there versus this particular style. But again, you know, find what suits you best and go forward with that. I'm going to stop here and we're going to start a new video to go over my favorite train case, the Starline or the Lady Baltimore.